Okay, so Jillian, is that it?
Yes, I don't have any other questions coming up.
Okay, listen, if anyone else has questions they want to...
Wait, I have another one. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's fine. Listen, Jillian and I will talk, and if you guys can think of anything, please send them. Go ahead.
Yes. It says, can a business meet the individual test?
Yeah, you know, that's a really good question. I think the individual test is meant to be harder than the business entity test. I'm not sure, by the way, that they've structured it under the statute that it definitely is, but what I'm going to warn you is this, is that I bet when they go and enforce it and when they have decisions in court, they're going to establish that it's a much tougher test than the business entity test, and there's almost a presumption that those individuals are your employees even more than the business entity. So I wouldn't think it would behoove the business to try. I think they should still stick with the business entity test, because even though the individual test only has 3 factors and it seems a lot easier, first of all, it'll be a business that can't do what you're doing at all. Okay, so that's one thing that you have an advantage with a business. You could bring in a separate business to do the same work that you perform as your company, as long as they're truly a separate business, which is the main advantage there. But yeah, I don't think that businesses coming in under the individual test are going to find it as easy once this gets enforced to say that you're compliant. I think that it would be silly if it's easier for an individual to be an independent contractor than a business. And even though it seems to be the way they wrote the law, I don't think it's correct.
Okay, another question. Here's the problem with this. We as general contractors have to have workman's comp and disability policy to obtain permits. But with a partnership, they do not have to have these policies, as I am being told by local building code people. We cannot be competitive when there are different rules for different entities.
You're right. I agree with that. I agree with that statement. It's a different law. I understand what you're saying, but you're right. I mean, when there's the workers' comp laws are structured, that way, so if somebody can come on and they don't have to cover workers' comp, especially in certain trades, it's a huge advantage to them. But to me, I think that one thing that I'm sorry, that's a terrible message to give you. So let me give you the positive side. The spin is this: is if the person bringing those people on site, you have to let them know. You have to let them know that would they really want someone who doesn't have workers' comp coverage working on their site, because then they're going to get sued if anyone ever gets hurt.
Okay. He says the Amish in our area are a big problem, where they do not have workman's comp or disability as we do, and the labor cost is less for them.
Yep. I understand what you're saying. I've heard it. So, are there any more questions, Jillian?
Not. Oh, yep. They use their religious entity for this. That's not a question, but.
Yeah, I know. He's listen. There's a lot of competition out there where it's not necessarily structured the right way, where it's not fair. So I don't think this independent contractor law is fair. So I understand where you're coming from, but at least it should apply to everyone.
Another question. As a small builder, I don't do any of the work on building a new home, so I am not really in any of the business of my subs. So that is why I asked about the individual test. Also, the building test is so limiting to small subs due to the investment clause. In fact, I don't know where I would find a large sub due to some work on a job. I guess.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. There's going for smaller jobs and smaller businesses. There's more of a risk involved here. I think really what you're going to need to do is assume that someone's made a substantial investment based upon the size of their company and what that would be. And right now there's no strict guidelines on that, so I understand there's risk involved, but there's got to be a different standard for someone who's doing renovations on a home versus someone who's doing, commercial buildings. So one would hope that they're going to come down with some decisions that there's a reasonableness standard here, and it depends on the circumstances and the type of job. So I understand what you're saying, and there's no provision here to say we're going to treat people differently between, large companies and large jobs and small companies. But listen, really what you have to factor in is, hey, are you doing this work, or are the people you bring on doing this work for the general public or other businesses? Are they really out there doing this for a lot of different people? And if that's the case, I think they're better or much more likely to be an independent contractor and considered an employee under this. And I just don't think that, however, I understand what you're saying in the question, and I think it's a good question, but I still think that when everything comes down and when they start rendering decisions on this law, that you're not going to have an easier time being an individual versus a business entity as an independent contractor. I think it's going to be tougher for individuals to meet that test.
And there's another question which actually I can answer. Someone asked, can you give us email addresses for questions to both of you? Kevin's email address is at the bottom of the PowerPoint presentation. If you can't see that, if anyone needs PowerPoint, I have that file. I can email it to you. And you have, most of you I think have my email address, but if not, I can get it to you. Yes, Mark, I'll send you the PowerPoint presentation.
Okay. Yeah, we'll definitely send it out. And listen, I hope I tried to be clear. This is a new law, so I think that to the extent I could give you practical advice, I tried, but there's still a lot of uncertainty as to this. So I think that you make your best efforts right now to comply with it and meet all the factors. If anyone wants a copy of the law too, let me know, and I'll have someone from my office send it. Jillian, what I'll do is I actually have someone.
One more question. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'll have someone, Jillian, just before I get to that, send you a copy so you can distribute it.
Oh, I have it. The
you have it?
PowerPoint?
Okay.
Yes. And the last question is there value to compiling the questions and sending them to the government to force them to define these things and document that they don't have answers?
I'm not going to tell you what lobbying efforts will pay off. I think that there are some lobbying efforts to get some clarity to this. Generally, the agencies don't give opinions, but what I can tell you is that if you start sending things into the Department of Labor, who's really the one in charge of the day-to-day enforcement of this, they may be quicker to issue regulations that clarify some of the issues. So yeah, there may be a value. I mean, beyond lobbying efforts, there may be a value to contacting and writing letters to the Department of Labor.